This pursuit of 21st century comfort and security is a lie we've been sold. By whom? Not exactly by anybody, and for the most part we know not why we pursue it. We believe it will lead to fulfillment and happiness and joy, but this is merely a symptom of our European and, well, Western nihilism, which precedes this death of God. But the answer isn't to run away from all of this. We don't just try to escape these comforts and these social structures that we've been essentially thrown into from birth. Comfort does not lead to happiness, and that's quite obvious if you lead the life of a last man, as Nietzsche calls it, a life of menial work and trivial fleeting pleasures, and going back home and busting a nut and eating takeaway and watching TV and all this shit, and living your life through somebody else's, whether that be on watching dating shows, cooking shows, masturbation over porn, over reading about X, Y and Z celebrity. They're all symptoms, they're all pieces of evidence of a fruitless life. But it's not a case of running away from Western civilization or Western thought or anything like that, but it's understanding that you can ride through this and still achieve some sense of self-realization. But you have to differentiate between insecurity and existential pain and, how would I put this? You have to be able to differentiate between insecurity and almost metaphysical pain. Differentiate between that and pain that arises from basically a shit way of living. Because the pain you derive from this can lead to existential pain and anxiety. A job that provides no meaning, living in a slumber. This can all inflict pain, instill pain in you, and so can other types of other modes of pain installation. Insecurity, loneliness, all of these sorts of things. These can be faced head on, and you can essentially transcend them, grow through them, grow past them, transcend them to a state of realization, self-realization, and these others must merely be essentially eradicated from one's life. So instead of complaining about your loneliness and continuing to do the norm of living on social media, watching porn, watching romance films all the time and all that sort of shit, you won't be able to differentiate them if they're so interrelated and essentially not dependent on one another, but this affects this, so I guess they're not mutually exclusive in that extent. So yeah, you want to differentiate them, eradicate this shit, the Western idea of living on social media and pursuing status, and then you'll be able to begin the self-realization process of finding meaning in a meaningless world, essentially. One without God, one without any inherent objective value system. But you can't work on that until you essentially realise this lie you've been fed. That sounds so superstitious and all this shit, but if you look at it, you know, when religion was about, and we were born into a world of structure, of a more orderly mode, then we had almost this inherent meaning, this objective meaning, and then God withdrew, you know, from this world, and here we are left in this status chasing materialistic world where we achieve X, Y and Z, and yet it leaves us unfulfilled. And there are symptoms of this everywhere, you know, potentially most acutely in the people who have achieved these ends, and their meaning is sought from other means than consumerism and status, you know, given they have a bit of intellect. So yeah, and all of this essentially is a pursuit of truth.